Now we're going to be just kind of getting the old crap off the old head gasket off the block. So you just want to take like a scraper and just kind of scrape it all off. Alright, after you get kind of your surface for the most part cleaned off, we're going to take a tap and just run down the bolt holes, make sure those are all nice and clean for when we install the new head gasket. Some of these won't be quite necessary. There's a little bit that pulled out of there. Some dirt, it looks like. But then other ones might really need it. Definitely some crap on that. We're just gonna clean the block a little bit, and we're still gonna have to blow out the bolt holes, which will, you know, spray a bunch of crap around, but we're just going to clean it up, make sure that we got all the stuff scraped off that we need to. Alright, next, what I should do, but I'm not going to, but what you should do, get a piece of flat metal, you know, measure it off across between your bolt holes like that, and get a piece of angle iron or something, you know, a flat bar, and what you'd want to do, get some smaller bolts and bring it down and torque it to spec. Take a feeler gauge and just go between the liner. So you want to go between the liner and the block, and just take a feeler gauge and, you know, make sure your liner height is, I believe, I just looked in the book last night, and it's 1/1000 to 4/1000. So then you'd go across this way, and you'd make sure it's all good, and you just go along and do that to all of them. I'm kind of running into time constraints with haying season approaching, so I'm not going to do that, in hopes that it's all good, and if it isn't, well, I'll probably be doing this again. Alright, now we're just going to clean the head surface. We ended up scraping it down with the scraper. Now we just got to get, there's a little bit of, you know, oily grit. Get it all nice and clean. Alright, so there's no dowels on this. I don't know if that's the way they came, or if at one point in time before when the head gasket was changed, if they didn't put it back in or whatnot. But we're going to make our own alignment dowel so we can set the head down right where it needs to be. So we're just going to take the old bolts, and we'll take 2 of them. We'll just cut the heads off so that way we can set it down right on that and slide it down, and then we can turn these out. Alright, we got one done. Now we just got to do the other. We got our alignment dowels here. So we'll just throw one in here and one in here. So this stuff here we'll be using to coat the head gasket before we put it on the block. From what I've been reading, you want to apply 3 coats and you want to wait 5 minutes in between coats. So we're just going to start, got it hanging from a wire right here. So alright, so now we're going to wait in between 5 minutes. We'll apply the next coat, wait 5 more minutes, apply the final coat, and we'll pick up there. And on your gasket, it'll say this side up. And that's the side you want up, obviously. Now we're going to get ready to get this into position. And you're going to want a helper for this part. Okay, you got that?
Yep.
Watch the other one.
Okay, let's go.
Is that one in?
Kind of.
Okay. Now remember, wiggle. Not too hard though. Just easy, nice and easy wiggle.
And that's how you put the head on.
So now we're going to get an impact. We're going to zip these off so we can pull the cherry picker off and start throwing some bolts in. Alright, now we're going to want to pull the hoist bolts we use for the hoist off. First, we're going to take our fancy dancy cat bolts and we'll get that started there. We'll get this one pulled out, our centering pin we were using. I did already apply a light coat of oil onto the threads. You're going to want a light coating on the threads just to make sure when you're torquing them you don't get a false reading. So we got these two ends here just snug down, not any real tension or tighten on them. We'll have to get the, once we get everything kind of there, we'll get the torque sequence out and we'll torque everything down. I believe it is a 3-step torque sequence, which we will cover when we get there. So for now we're just going to put the rest of our bolts on, get our rocker assembly put in here with the bolts there, and we're going to be oiling all of our threads on our new bolts. So I guess before we put the valve rocker assembly on, we need to put our push rods in. When we're putting these on, you're going to want to clean them off. Just got some brake clean on my rag here, and just try to clean all the crap you can off of it. You want to also inspect it, make sure there isn't any bends in it. You want to make sure it's straight. Then just slide it down the hole till it seats in the lifter. Move on to the next one. Alright, so we were having a problem putting one of these in. It was like hanging out maybe about that tall, where the rest of them, you know, were going in nice, and after kind of bouncing around a little bit, it finally fell in. But when you're pulling these out, sometimes the lifter will stay on the end of your push rod and get kind of stuck up. So what you're going to want to do if that happens, you're going to need to pull this side cover here for your tappets, and it's just flathead screws, and take those all off, and that way you can get to your tappets and whatever. We were fortunate enough to where that finally fell into place, so we don't have to do that, but you can do that, you know. And if you're already going this far, if it's kind of leaking, that's a good time to replace the gasket. Mine is loose, that's why it's all like this. Oh, I also had a leaky valve cover gasket as well, which didn't help anything. But this, now we got that all in place, so we'll get our rocker assembly thrown on and get our bolts in. Alright, so you want to make sure when you're putting this on, there's springs here that keep kind of everything where it needs to be, and when you're moving it around as one big piece, it can come apart if you only grab like the middle or the end or whatever. So you kind of want to squish it together when you're moving, and you just kind of want to get these all into position. There we go. Then there's some little alignment dowels on the bottom. So there's an alignment dowel right here, that little chunk of metal. Got to get that lined up with the hole, and when you do, and you get it just right, it should allow the assembly to kind of plop into its position where it needs to be. So now everything's where it needs to be, and let's get some bolts in here.
So I guess you just want to put one washer in.
Yeah.
My bad. I put this in?
Yep.
Hey people, just do it. Like, put it. Don't drop it. I'm a bad example.
We're going to torque these down. The book says that it should be torqued to 85 to 95 foot-pounds. Online they were saying 110 to 120. I'm guessing that some people tighten it down a little bit more and get a better clamp on it, so that's what we're going to do. So we're going to go with a 4-step process. We'll torque them to 50, 75, 100, and then 115. So this one's the first one you want. Oh! I said watch your steppies. Alright, now we need to set our valves because we had to loosen them all to take the valve rocker assembly out. And to do that we got to get the engine in the top dead center on number 1. So to do that, jacked up the rear tire. We're just going to throw this in gear and turn the motor over that way. I pulled all the glow plugs out. That way it won't build up any compression. It'll be easier to spin the motor over by using the tire. So I got it in 5th gear. And now I just need to spin it and watch the front number 1 here, because we want top dead center. Need to look for our timing mark. So I found my timing mark. I don't know if I can get you in there or not. Alright, so there's the timing marks there. So I'm going to clean that off with some brake clean. Get a paint marker, mark my top dead center, and then I can use that to figure out my number 1, number 6 top dead center. And that way I can set my valves. We are close, people. That might work. Alright, so looking at the book here, it says there's 2 different charts here. If the number 1 is at top dead center, 1, 2, 3 could be adjusted, 5, 7, 9. And right now it's at top dead center on the flywheel. It could be either be number 1 or number 6. 1, 2, 3 could be adjusted. Well, this one is loose, that one's loose, that one's loose. Number 4 cannot, which number 4 is pushed down here, so I'm going to assume that it's on number 1 top dead center, so we will start adjusting with the top of the chart there. Now we're gonna take our that's gonna have to be adjusted a little bit. Alright, now we're just going to reinstall our glow plugs. We will put the exhaust gaskets in place, which all of mine came off nicely, so I'm thinking I will reuse them, but if that doesn't pan out, I will let you know. Alright, now we're going to torque our exhaust manifold bolts. We can torque all of them except these ones back here. Can barely get a wrench on those, so I got them as tight as I can get them with their location. But the rest of these, they say 20 to 30 foot-pounds. So we'll go right in the middle, 25. We'll just kind of go back and forth. There isn't an exact sequence. So I'll just double check these. Before we get the intake back on, we're going to need to clean off the old gasket. Just taking a scraper, just kind of scraping off all the old crap. Alright, next you're going to want to blow out your runners here. Make sure you don't have any leftover gasket material getting into the engine. You're going to want to take some rags, some brake clean, make sure you wipe all the crap off. So I tried putting that copper stuff on the gasket, thinking maybe it would be sticky tacky enough where it would kind of hold on here while I could stick it on, and didn't work. Probably could use a dab of grease just to hold it in place, but you know, I like doing things the hard way, I guess. I'm probably going to get a lot of grief for this. I'm not actually tightening it, just running them down. Then we'll torque these, same spec as we did that. We'll just do 25. And you know what, we'll start from the center. Work our way out. Alright, so my camera died, so I had to, I did a little bit when I was running. I got valve cover on, my fuel lines on, filter housing, got my fan shroud and belt, all that all squared away. Now we're going to drop the fuel tank frame back down. Now you don't need to get this all pretty. You only run it for about an hour, and then you have to retorque the head bolt, which involves pulling the valve cover, which only way I found is you got to pull this right here. So we're just going to reinstall everything bare bones, just so we can run it, and then retorque everything. So there isn't a torque spec, just, you know, nice and tight. Next we're going to be cleaning out our, we'll just blow this out quick. Sure to pull that out. This does need a gasket. Guess we'll just hook up our wires here. Alright, so next step, I think we're ready to take the fuel tank and set it in position. That way we can finish hooking up our fuel line and our air intake over to the air filter. And then just hook up the batteries, and I think we are, oh yeah, coolant. And fill it with coolant. Then I think we're ready to bleed the fuel system and let it run for a little bit. Oopsie daisy. A little bit heavier than I remember. I think before I get this hooked up, I'm just going to run some compressed air through it, just to make sure that mouse didn't get in there and make a mess or what have you. We're not going to bolt the fuel tank down or this cross member here. A lot of it we're just going to leave for now, just so we don't have to pull as much when we go to re-tighten our head bolts. Okay, fuel bowl is in. Now we just need to hook up our fuel line. We need to get the stop cable hooked up, so that way we don't take off. We're gonna put our coolant back in. Look at all that crap that screen kept from getting in my cooling system. Filled up the tank with fuel. So now let's open the fuel up, make sure we don't have any leaks in our lines here, and then we can start priming the fuel system. Let's see that. Right here there's a little bit of a seep, so we're going to have to try to tighten that connection. Now we're going to take this plug out right here and prime the fuel system. There we got some fuel. Alright, next we're gonna open up the this right here and get fuel coming out of here. See that air coming out? Alright, next you're gonna, if you tightened up your line, you're gonna want to loosen them. That way when you kick it over at first, it'll pump all the air out of the lines. And so you want to crank it over until you get fuel coming out. Alright, got the batteries up in place there. Now we've got to tighten down our connections. So before you hook up your batteries, you want to make sure you put it in neutral, just in case for some odd reason there's a wire touching or whatever the case may be. Doesn't try turning over and run you over. Alright, so I think we are ready to turn it over. We got our fuel system primed up to the injection pump here. So now we've got all of our injection lines loose. So we're just going to kick it over till we get fuel coming out. And once we got fuel coming out, we'll tighten these down and get her fired up. That might be the problem. I had the throttle all the way down. So I opened it wide open so it'll really be squirting that fuel. So hopefully that makes a difference. lots of fuel squirting out. So now we'll put our injection lines back on. Alright, so I didn't walk you through pulling the tank and all that stuff off again, because if you want to watch that, you can watch part 1 of this video. Now we're just going to re-torque and then button everything back up, and we'll be done. So, got the torque wrench here to 115. We'll start on this one here. Alright. Thanks for watching. If you like this video, please like and subscribe.